Welcome again, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations on making it back for what is actually our last panel session of the day. I hope you took the opportunity to try the lemon drizzle cake, because for me, lemon drizzle cake is fuel, so I'm now re-energized, I've refueled. Do come in if you're still making your way to your seats, that's fine. As you know, we're talking about resilient Arctic communities this afternoon, and we've really focused thus far on people and communities and what resilience means in terms of those communities. Now we're switching our focus somewhat. I mean, we're not ignoring people, believe me, but now we're really focusing our gaze and our thoughts on changing infrastructure, technology, and business in the Arctic North, because of course, you know, communities need jobs and economic activity needs investment in infrastructure and the very latest technologies which perhaps can work for the benefit of the North, some of which may also raise real challenges for the North, big decisions and choices to be made. So we're going to unpick all of that. We're going to consider the climatic conditions in the North, what that means in terms of future investments and the safety and security of both business and people in the North going forward. We're going to hear from a particularly successful business from the north of Norway. We're going to hear the perspective of a mayor of one important community in Norway. We're going to hear from an esteemed academic who thinks about all of these things. We're going to have just one keynote, and then it's going to be a discussion. So let me begin by inviting my keynote speaker to take to the stage, and he is somebody who has a great deal of academic and research experience that is extremely relevant to our discussion today. So please give a very warm welcome to Peter Schweitzer, who is, I should say Professor Peter Schweitzer. He's a professor in the University of Vienna. He also has strong links and spends a great deal of time at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks. So Peter Schweitzer, please come and give us your thoughts.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for the introduction. Thank you very much for the organizers to bring me here, to invite me to this panel. I will try to be some kind of a link between the previous panel and this one, as I'm an anthropologist and I tend to speak primarily about people, but I will be talking about infrastructure. And the question that drives me today, and actually for the last several years, is how can Arctic infrastructures, and in particular Arctic transportation infrastructures, which are typically built by and used by outside interests, benefit local communities, local Arctic communities? So that's really my question. Let me start with the state of Alaska, in which I had the privilege to live and work for more than 20 years. The western part of that state is almost entirely roadless. This has a variety of reasons, from permafrost to wetlands to low population density, and state policies aimed at limiting public expenditures. Still, for decades, there have been discussions about building new roads. Let me take the example of the often proposed road between Nome and Fairbanks, my former hometown of Fairbanks. Up to the present day, there is no such road between these two places. The main reason being that many members of communities along the way oppose the plan or the multiple plans that have been developed over the years. It is evident to everyone that prices for groceries and other goods would drop significantly with road access. So why the opposition? There are various reasons, clearly, but the fear of what this access, this road access, might bring to local communities, everything from drugs to alcohol, from drugs and alcohol, or the import of drugs and alcohol, to urban hunters competing for wildlife resources is the dominant theme here. Let's now go a bit to the east, cross the Alaskan-Canadian border, and go to the Mackenzie Delta in Canada, where in November 2017, the first Canadian highway to the Arctic Ocean, the so-called Inuvik-Tuktoyaktuk highway, was opened. What is so special about this project and this road? According to my colleague Mia Bennett, who has done research on the project, it is the fact that the project was spearheaded by indigenous entities and companies, thus making the point that indigenous communities can be promoters and partners in infrastructure development and not just its perceived victims. Of course, it's a fairly young road, so we'll have to see what the eventual outcomes of this project will be. So we had now two examples of roads. What about railroads? Northern Fennoscandia certainly has had its share of controversy over the proposed Arctic rail link from Kirkenes to Rovaniemi lately. As I understand it, and I'm no specialist for this part of the world, for the time being, the issue has been laid to rest by a combination of factors, including objections by Sami reindeer herders and concerns over economic feasibility. While this might not be the last word on this project, let's turn to an existing rail line. For the last 4.5 years, our team in Vienna has been studying the social impacts of the Baikal-Amur main line, which in short is called BAM. So it's a railroad in eastern Siberia. The BAM is an example of extreme social, demographic, and ecological impacts ever since the construction began 45 years ago. For example, the ethnic landscape has been completely reshuffled. One of the things being that the indigenous population of the region is now absolute minority, and mobility patterns have changed drastically, as previously non-accessible regions are now crossed by passenger and cargo trains. Obviously, this needs to be understood within the context of a totalitarian political system, the Soviet Union, where local concerns were anything but central. At the same time, even there were small developments that have become locally significant. My colleague Olga Pavrosnyuk, who is in the room today, and I have recently published a paper entitled A Right to Remoteness, ? Which is about a small, predominantly indigenous community off that railroad, off the BAM, which for 35 years or so has successfully fought against being connected to that railroad, to the BAM, via a bridge and eventually a road. Interestingly, this community is considered to be a role model for indigenous cultural revitalization today. I could mention many more examples, including the Northern Sea Route, a hot topic these days, where we have started new research last year. In the interest of time, however, I will not do so, but refer you to a Theme 4 session and roundtable that we will be holding on Wednesday about the Northern Sea Route. So what's my message here? On the one hand, it should be obvious that I advocate for community involvement in the planning, construction, and maintenance of new transport and other infrastructure projects. We need to better understand what the intended, but also unintended consequences of infrastructure development for Arctic communities are. Here, you might say, but we have ecological and sometimes even social impact assessments. This brings me to my second point. We do not only need impact assessments before the fact, but also assessments after the fact. That is, we need detailed ethnographic or other detailed studies of what infrastructure actually does, and not just what we think beforehand that it might do. These unintended and unimagined consequences can be both good or bad. Thus, it is not about preventing the further development of transport infrastructure in the Arctic. On the contrary, many Arctic communities really wish for that. But it's about careful considerations about who benefits and who loses. in times of rapid climate change, this also means the integration of local and indigenous knowledge. Thus, in the end, the well-being of Arctic communities needs to be at the center of these conversations. Thank you.